thanks everyone for coming to the Superset Meetup. And we have a great presentation today. Bensei will be speaking, and take it away, Bensei.
Thanks, Srini. Can you guys hear me and see my screen properly? Thank you. Yeah, welcome everyone to this meetup. And there's one item on the agenda really, which is a Superset roadmap. And so let me start with a quick introduction about myself, just to get things going. So my name is Bensei. I'm a product manager at Preset. Been with the company and been in the community since January, so almost a year. Although it feels like 2 years with all things going on this year. So I don't know if I get credit accordingly, but yeah. So been in the Superset community since January. Today we're gonna talk about the. It's been advertised as Superset 1.0 or the Superset roadmap, but it's really essentially a story of evolution of Superset and how we think we can maximize the benefit of that and maximize visibility of that evolution as a roadmap and as a public roadmap. So I'll be talking about by starting with how we got here, or how we think that Superset is at a tipping point where it's going to soon become unstoppable, and how Superset 1.0 is a major milestone on that road to an explosive success, and what else lies beyond 1.0, or how we can collaborate as a community around the roadmap and driving the project forward into the future. So starting at the beginning. So I might be stating the obvious at times. So those who have been involved in the project for a long time, please excuse me that if I'm stating things that are obvious or well understood. But the good thing is that we have people joining the community and the project in increasing numbers. So I thought it would make sense to start with talking about how we got here. So where did Superset come from? Initially, Superset was born out of a hackathon project inside Airbnb, and that goes back many years, and there's some anecdotal stories around how it happened. But what happened after that was, as an open source project, it started gaining popularity very quickly, and data teams of many modern data-driven companies discovered it and adopted it as a tool for ad hoc analysis and slicing and dicing and data visualization. And over the course of the years, as a growing project, it has clearly proven itself in enterprise at petabyte scale, and it has clearly become the tool of choice for many modern data teams as it grew. So what is Superset really? I mean, it's a surprisingly, when I first encountered the project and the product, I was surprised how sophisticated and complex it is. It has a pretty robust data source connectivity component. It can connect to pretty much any and all SQL-based databases that speak some dialect of SQL. And then it also offers a very good, very powerful SQL IDE, as well as it has a visual exploration and visualization component, which eventually can be turned into dashboards and shared out as collections of visualization. So it's a pretty complex product with a lot of experiences, a lot of functionality that were developed over the years. So how does the opportunity that we are seeing here, how does it present itself? The BI and business analytics market is big in the US and worldwide. And there seems to be pretty good signal that Superset has a really good potential to make every team a data team with the power of open source. Open source is really lends itself well to what's called the bottoms-up motion. People can adopt it with a very low cost of entry, and so they can download it and try it quickly on their laptops and be on their way slicing and dicing data. And because of that, and because of how open source works, it has the potential to enable everyone in an organization to level up their data skills and be a next generation data tool that is powerful yet accessible. So that's the opportunity in a small nutshell. And then what it seems that we have on our hands is what's called a tipping point in any project, or actually in a lot of things in life. There's a point where the project becomes unstoppable and adoption accelerates non-linearly. This phenomenon has been observed with other open source projects, as well as other types of technologies. And so as I was looking up the definition of tipping point, one thing that came up, which I liked, was an event that is inevitable but not entirely predictable. And if you look at the number, different type of community metrics, the number of PRs, the number of new contributors, or the number of stars the project gathered over I would say in recent past, those metrics seem to indicate that this tipping point is within reach for Superset. So that's an opportunity. The market is there, the market is ripe, the project is at a tipping point. So seems like a recipe for success. Now, where do we go from here? So what we were thinking is that currently the project, I think the latest version is 0.38. And the question then became, given these conditions where there's a lot of vectors pointing at potential success and a huge opportunity, how do we give Superset a big push to tip over? And so as we were thinking about that, 1.0 as a version, or the next version, became the symbol of that next phase or next stage. And so what we are presenting here is a proposal and actually the dedication of a lot of resources and time and energy to make that push for 1.0. Clearly, this is not just another change in a version. We think that this is a major maturity milestone in the life of this project, because what this version should indicate is that Superset is ready for prime time, and combined with the Apache Software Foundation graduation, which is expected to happen later this year, we believe that it's going to send a strong signal and it's going to get the product ready for prime time and really go out there and kick some butt when it comes to open source data visualization and exploration. So that's how we got here, and that's how the idea of Superset 1.0 evolved over the course of the past several months. But then we got down to, okay, how do we define Superset 1.0? And so what we did was we went out and created a list of many ideas, projects, SIPs. We reviewed a lot of things in the community, everything that we could lay our hands on. And we were going around asking people in the community what they would like to see on the roadmap, what they need, what they want. But we also looked at what are the things that we believe are needed for Superset 1.0 from an architectural maturity standpoint. And also we found that there's some technical debt to be cleaned up. And even more than that, we found that there's some user experience and design debt that we believe should be cleared up, or at least addressed as part of the way to 1.0. There was clearly no shortage of ideas. I think the long list was way over 50 projects. And so the way we were trying to prioritize or think about moving things to the top of the list is what's the amount of user impact versus the engineering effort required. Sometimes it is called like low-hanging fruit or quick wins. To be clear, not everything on the roadmap is these like quick wins, but there's I think part of the strength that comes from this roadmap is that there's a lot of small things that collectively make up a much better product experience and the product offering. And so these things combined make up 1.0. As we were going through this project, a couple of themes started to emerge, and I think it makes sense to mention what these are because it's really interesting, and it kind of makes sense. At least it made sense for us as these themes were emerging. So there was clearly a theme about user experience improvement, where parts of the UI needed simpler, more intuitive experiences. It appears that organic growth that the product went through sometimes can lead to fragmented experiences. So we thought now is a time to address some of these and make them better and more intuitive, which should help with adoption and use for many users. Also, another theme that emerged was there's no shortage of new features, but as we were bubbling things to the top, new features in some areas became prominent, such as discovery and navigation, visualizations, or sharing and collaboration. So this is something that clearly seems to be a strong theme. Also, developer experience improvement. Being an open source project, there's a lot of people out there building features and functionality in Superset. So making their lives easier is clearly a theme that needs to be there when it comes to building, deploying, and maintaining Superset functionality. And last but not least, there were some learnings from using Superset at scale. And so performance was a theme that showed up on the radar as something to be addressed in certain ways. So these are the main themes that emerged as we were scoring through that list of projects that I mentioned, the long list. And when it comes to the proportion of these projects, more than half of these relate to user experience improvements. About a third of them fall in the bucket of new features. There's some developer experience and then performance and a few miscellaneous items, just to kind of give you a quick profile of the nature of this roadmap. So having talked about what our approach to the roadmap is, how we kind of come up with a list of projects. So now that we have the work cut out, then the question was, where do we go from here? So one thing we found is that in the community, there were these sort of like, there was quite a bit of one-to-one conversations about projects that could be. So we were having quite a bit of conversations about bilaterally with community members, like what are the things they want, what are the things they are working on. And so what we realized that if we had a public roadmap that is out in the open, groomed and maintained by the community, that can enable that conversation to be many to many. So essentially, everyone would have a good understanding of who's working on what's coming up, or what are others thinking about, without having to have these one-on-one conversations, which we never felt we were able to kind of get the big full picture of the roadmap. So we decided to, we felt that a public roadmap was necessary as a representation of all these ideas going on. And as we went through this exercise, we built a strong conviction that the public roadmap enables the cross-team, cross-functional dialogue. We looked at other public roadmaps, so we were heavily inspired by how others do this, and there seemed to be a lot of value in doing this exercise. So where we went from there is we created a SIP, which is SIP 53, which introduced the concept or proposed the concept of a public roadmap. The SIP passed some time ago. And once we had this framework, once we had this kind of platform or vehicle to talk about the roadmap, we here at Preset went ahead and published a list of projects that we were able to put resources behind. And one thing I want to mention is that at Preset, we have quite a growing team dedicated to the success of Superset, and that includes product managers, designers, as well as developers. And it's been a very exciting time ever since the roadmap emerged to think about these projects and have our product managers, designers, and engineers work on things small and large. And so this cross-functional approach has been really, really exciting. And it's clearly reflected in the roadmap. There's a large number of projects, and they are in different stages of development or planning. So 1.0 is already underway. And again, we are putting a lot of efforts and resources behind making it happen here at Preset, and working with the rest of the community to collaborate on making even more projects happen.
A quick note too on how we're approaching Superset 1.0 too is we're not working in the branch. We're really working on master progressively. So really, it's been, you know, we've been working on Superset 1.0, you know, all year, and really, if you think about it, since the beginning of the project in some ways. And the releases, so we're still doing monthly Apache releases. Or recently, we decided to have steady Apache official releases, so we're still doing that. And the releases that you see are really kind of checkpoints in between kind of where we're at and 1.0 at this point, right? So there's no magic branch behind the scene that you might want to pull. It's really master is like slowly evolving to become 1.0.
What you see is what you get. It takes some practice for one to understand how to navigate around the roadmap. So I wanted to share a couple of pointers. First of all, SIP53, and I believe Srini has already posted the links, and we are going to share this content out. We're gonna have to figure out what's the best way to share this content, but I'll put it online and available for everyone in the community. But for now, I just wanted to show a couple of pointers. So SIP53 is the SIP that talks about kind of like the impetus for the roadmap and some practical implications and thought process as to like how to go about thinking about the roadmap now that we have one. So that's a good read to kind of get a primer on the roadmap. Also, so the roadmap is its own repo. The reason being, this is following some best practices out there that it's the only thing it contains is roadmap information, so that it doesn't get buried under the daily noise and change of the code repo. And there's a README in there that talks about some additional practical aspects of how to think about contributing to the roadmap. And it's something I'm going to touch on later. I just wanted to mention that this README gives like hands-on instructions as to how to operate around the roadmap. And then last but not least, the roadmap itself, which is a GitHub board, and it's as up to date as I can tell. And it's a Kanban board using a project and filters in GitHub. And then each card has, when you click on it, it has a bunch of information about the individual projects. It can be filtered by labels, and also you can filter by milestones. And then we have Superset 1.0 as a milestone. I'm gonna try to get to that. So anyway, so there's a milestone defined for 1.0 and you can filter by that. Yeah, here it is. So that's going to give you the ability to look at, okay, what's in Superset 1.0, and as subsequent releases or subsequent versions are defined, those also going to be filterable, and you can see what's coming. So that's the roadmap in the flash. And so I kind of wanted to share those pointers. And then now let's take a deep dive or a deeper dive into what 1.0 really entails. I didn't want to talk about 50 plus projects. So what we did was we went ahead and looked at a couple of highlights or notable mentions, which we thought well represent these different themes and the nature of the roadmap. Some of them have already shipped, as Max mentioned, that some of them have already been merged into master and available. Others are work in progress. Others are coming soon. So please consult the roadmap to see where exactly these projects stand. What we're going to talk about here is the essence of them. And here, there's a lot of information to be shared. And what I would say is encourage everyone here on this webinar to ask questions as we go through these projects. I'm sure different projects will appeal to different people for different reasons. Feel free to ask. We have members of the preset product team here, and they will be more than happy to go into details about individual projects. Obviously, there's a lot of questions. There can be a lot of questions. So, this is a high level overview, and then we'll be glad to go into details on any level as needed. So let's start with user experience improvements. We have card layout, which is a new way to present lists when you look at a list of charts or dashboards, and it makes sense to present them with thumbnails because it helps with discoverability and finding content using little thumbnail images. And I have a slide for that. So this is card layout view, which changes the paradigm of everything presented as a sort of dull list in preset. And for those type of objects that make sense, you can now browse based on what those different items look like. Explore controls is, so if you happen to use Explore a lot, you've probably noticed that depending on what type of chart you're working on, there's a lot of controls that are needed, and you have to kind of put a lot of information in to conform a chart to your needs. And we're taking a big sweep at these controls and making them more intuitive. It's a lot of detail to coordinate, but eventually it should make creating charts easier and more intuitive. Another big sort of pet peeve in user experience has been how the user navigates from SQL Lab to Explore. There's a long list of things that are just not cool with that flow. I think it's an example of the organic growth of the product where intuitiveness kind of was left behind, and so we're trying to pay down that UX debt by making it smoother, the experience where users, when they run a query in SQL Lab and then they want to explore it in Explore, make that experience more intuitive, more natural, and less prone of misunderstandings. So that's another thing coming as far as the user experience goes. Filter status indicator, another example, and here we have an illustration. So on dashboards, when you apply the filters, sometimes it's not entirely clear how the filters are applied. So that experience has been changed and improved, so that when you have a lot of charts on a dashboard and you have complex filters, then you know exactly what's being applied, what's not applied, or what is incompatible. So that's been something that's been highly requested. Yeah, another user experience improvements, native dashboard filters. If you've built dashboards before, you know that filters, the filter box is really just a sort of a modified chart type, which leads to many problems. To start with, it's really unintuitive to create a chart which gonna end up being a filter. So we're changing that, and we're introducing the concept of a native filter component that can be defined, used, and modified directly from the dashboard. That's a big sort of like functional debt area, if you ask me, and it's going to be really exciting to see that improve the overall dashboard experience. Moving on to the next bucket, data visualizations. Visualization plugin architecture, I should say new visualization plugin architecture. It's something that has already been shipped. It's been a big theme in the first half of the year, which makes it a lot easier to create new visualization plugins. And on the heels of that, we're working on making the Viz plugin imports dynamic so that visualizations can be loaded easier, hosted at a place of your choice, and so making it overall easier to work with new visualizations that people build using the previously mentioned architecture. Still in the data visualizations theme, the community, together with the community, the decision was made to adopt Apache Echarts as the new chart visualization library. And this opens up a tremendous amount of possibilities in terms of the types of charts, the functionality of the charts, and a lot of things. So this is really exciting to see this, this library being adopted, which by itself is a big shooting star, a rising star, I should say, a rising star in the open source world. So this is really exciting. Moving on to discovery and navigation. When you logged into Superset, you would be landing on, I think it was the list of dashboards that the user would be landed on. That experience is now changed. We have a native home screen that the user lands on when they log in, and that page is gonna evolve over time into a fully dynamic and relevancy-driven information hub where users can pick up previous projects or previous work, or identify things that others are working on, or so things that are relevant for them. And so this would clearly make it easier for people to get back into Superset and pick up work from where they left it off, or discover what others are working on. So home screen, it's already out there, the first version, and I think it's going to get a lot of iterations over the course of the next couple of months. Another big discovery and navigation item, global search. So right now, if you're looking for something and the only in the system, and the only thing you remember is a fragment of the title, and you don't know if it, exactly where it was or what it was, it's not always easy to find that. And what global search does is it allows users to search anywhere in the app using a single search term, and then information relevant for that search will be surfaced. For full disclosure, what's being shown here, this screenshot, is showing a future state of the search. So we're going to start with an MVP. This is a big project, but eventually it's going to evolve into what's being shown here, which is a full search experience across objects and users. Sharing and collaboration. One item that has clearly bubbled to the top and was clearly identified as much needed is alerts and reports. So a quick explanation: alerts are notifications triggered based on a metric being monitored, and when certain things happen to that metric, such as a threshold is reached, then a notification is fired off. Reports are schedule-driven delivery of charts and dashboard snapshots. And these features have been around in some shape or form. What's happening here is we're building much more intuitive UI for it. And also we're making the backend more robust and ready for regular business use as part of 1.0. Developer experience, two things to mention. One of them is single page application. So right now, Superset is multiple React applications, a combination of multiple React applications. Turning it into a single page application will have a lot of benefits for developers and a more smoother experience for users. Again, for full disclosure, this project is kind of on the verge of not making it in 1.0 because it's a major undertaking. But at some point, we're going to have to tackle this. And also, when it comes to developer experience, component library. So UI or front-end developers will, I'm sure, highly appreciate the fact that components are being built and introduced so that UI is more consistent when it comes to building and presentation. Obviously there's a lot of details around it, but folks from the preset engineering team will be glad to provide some details. I think there was someone raising their hands, or Srini, were there some questions that should we pause here for a second and look at questions?
Sure. Yeah, there's 2 questions, and feel free to ask more, folks. But first one is, do you have access to Q&A? Do you want to look through those and answer, Bense?
Let me see.
It'd be good to repeat the question for the recording as well.
Hold on. Let me just open it. So.
Or I'll just read it out. So is there a way to select who can see which dashboards, basically permissions around dashboards in Superset?
I can take this one. So currently, the way to do this is by proxy through the data set they have access to. So you can define who has access to which database, which data set. So that's how those rights are defined. And if you have access to all of the data sets that are behind a certain dashboard, then you should see it in your list. I believe that if you don't have access to some of the data sets behind the dashboard, you won't see it in the list of dashboard. There is ongoing conversation in the community too around adding kind of per dashboard access rights, right? So where you might be able to say, hey, this person had, or this role or this person has access to this dashboard. And at which point, you'd be able to see the dashboard, but presumably not be able to explore if you don't have access explicitly to the underlying data set, right? So then you have this this level of like, hey, are you trying to give people access to the data behind the dashboard and the dashboard, or just the dashboard, and you don't want them to go and explore further? So that's an ongoing conversation. There's open PRs on the topic, and I believe there is a SIP. So that's a topic that you can follow and put some weight behind if it's important to you.
Thank you, Max. Next question is, what about a good pivot a la Tableau chart? And I'm assuming a pivot table type chart that is being asked for. I'm gonna be honest, I don't know if that's something Echarts supports out of the box, or maybe if we have Junlin here, she's the PM for visualizations.
We should ask to clarify the question. I think it's unclear what pivot means in this context, whether we're talking about a pivot table type component, or we're talking about like kind of an array or matrix of charts, which I think might be what's going on. I think in Tableau, it's possible to say like make one chart for each country, or make one chart. And I'm not sure if that's what the attendee is asking here. So please re-ask the question with more detail about what you mean by pivot.
Yeah, so I think the general answer, which might be too generic, is that Echarts. So one way to introduce a new chart type is through Echarts, and the other one is to build a custom visualization. If someone they have a specific type of thing that they need, then the new Viz plugin architecture allows for building components or visualizations that don't exist. And I know this is not an answer to the question. I just want to say that now there's more possibilities to create charts that don't exist.
And there's probably a possibility as well for some of these charts that are popular in the community to be promoted to become part of the core set of charts. So we'll probably, we're really hoping we start to see an ecosystem of plugins growing, people building plugins and plugin packs left and right, and sharing them with the community. And then the question is like, which one of these plugins should kind of ship with Superset and be managed and maintained by the core group of committers, right? But we haven't seen that yet, but I think in the future it's very possible that we'll see some of these plugins or plugin pack get promoted to that level.
Thank you, Max. So the next question is, it's a little longer. So for maps, Superset uses GeoJSON, and there are a lot of Esri shapefile maps in the world. Is there a recommended shapefile to GeoJSON file command line conversion procedure for developers to add custom maps for users? It seems to be more of a documentation issue. Doesn't have to be Superset code yet. Or am I missing the point? Is Superset intended to be used with a web map server?
That sounds like a pretty deep question. I work pretty deeply on map. I know Beto worked on map quite a bit. I don't know if he's on the call, but I think I'm very familiar with GeoJSON. I do not know the other, what was ESRI and whether there's
Esri has
Esri
its own format.
Right. So I don't know if there's like easy conversions possible. It seems like it could be contributed back. I believe in the GeoJSON DeckGL visualization or the polygon one, we support different types of polygons. So if there's a Python library that allows converting Esri to GeoJSON, assuming that it's a subset of the feature, right? Like there might be some things that could get that common denominator problem or things that get lost in translation. Beto, I see you you open your video. Do you know anything about Esri?
Yeah, I work with them. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I work with a lot of GIS before. I think it would be hard because of the SQL model of Superset to directly like connect to a map server. But it's open source. We can always like try to think of new ways of doing things.
Is it more standard for tiles or a standard for kind of objects defined on top, like more like GeoJSON?
Yeah, if I remember correctly, there's standards for like tiles, for like shapes. There are different standards. I haven't worked with it in 8 years, I think, but it's basically a tile service for data or images or images or data, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, so on the Superset side too, things are very, very layered, right? So the plugin system, uses JavaScript, and then we use DeckGL, which is built on top of I think it's called MapGL or some underlying, Uber library. So those are all like Uber library, geospatial libraries that are awesome and super well written. And all of these built on top of Mapbox too, which is very flexible. So there's all sorts of hooks. I haven't worked with those libraries. There's all sorts of hooks to modify Mapbox in an intricate way and hook it up to different things. So I would assume that Mapbox works well with Esri, and there's probably some way to kind of make that compatibility a layer. But I would say it's not for the faint of art. It definitely is not a one-day project. It's probably something fairly deep, complicated. Something
definitely to be explored further, like how these different words can come together. My experience with Esri is that it's sort of like an industry standard for certain types of GIS applications, and it's a really awesome GIS product. But bringing these words together, I think it's something to be explored further.
The keywords for research would be something like deck.gl, which is a library that we use, and then Esri, and maybe Mapbox. So like looking for that, I'm sure people have played with that. I just Googled it and found some interesting, what looked like interesting search results.
Yeah, and let us know if anyone from, something I was gonna get to later is like collaboration around the roadmap, that I think it makes a lot of sense for these kind of questions to be opened up in the roadmap as ideas, and then others can chime in and help and provide insights and find ways to make it happen. So that's exactly, again, something I'm going to talk about a little later, like how to collaborate on the roadmap for questions like this. A quick question, I'm going to kind of boil it down to, so it's about releases. Are planned additional releases before 1.0? So that's sort of like the bottom line of this question, that right now, so the person saying they are on 0.36, and with 0.38 being in the works, is there going to be more releases before 1.0? I'm not exactly sure where the monthly cadence really stands, but we don't have that many months between now and 1.0. So hopefully, so maybe one release there. I don't know exactly.
I think 038 just passed a vote, right? So the RC3 just passed the vote. So now it's getting voted on by the incubator, which once we graduate, we won't have like this 2-level of voting. But it looks like, I think I saw 1+1 like last night or yesterday. So that means I think we need 3 at the incubator level. So that means like, it's like minutes now or day, like literally days before 038 is out. Very likely that in December, we'll probably do a 039, or it might be 1.0. So it's unclear when the 1.0 RC is going to show up and whether there's going to be a 39 or 39 is the actual like 1.0. Yeah.
Thanks. Are there plans to enable true multi-tenancy permissions for using Superset as an embedded analytics layer? So this has come up a lot, and I think it's safe to say that embedded is a whole world unto itself, and it probably warrants a larger discussions as to what it takes to support embedded analytics. There's the multi-tenancy aspect of it. There's other aspects of the embedded scenario, and it's a bit of a byproduct of. It seems to be a byproduct of Superset right now. Like some people are experimenting or doing certain types of embeds, and I think it really comes down to what the exact embedded scenario requires, including multi-tenancy. I
can talk a little bit about these. So to me, I would generally tend to, like, those are 2 big topics that are a little bit related, but I think they are embedded and offering kind of role-specific embedded. So saying like, oh, I'm going to make certain things public, or there's going to be the idea of a token where if you need to have the token to be able to consume a certain embedded content is I believe one aspect that's its own big topic. And multi-tenancy in the sense of like making it feel like a single application instance of Superset is multiple instances of Superset, like isolation essentially between different groups of people, is also a fairly complicated thing. And we look into it. For context, at Preset, we do have multi-tenant Superset, but we do that on the orchestration layer mostly. And we look pretty deeply at doing that at the application layer. And the reason we do it at the orchestration layer is because it's really hard to do at the application, or it's fairly tricky to do it at the application level. In parts is because we use something called Flask App Builder as the framework that's in charge of things like authentication, permission, roles, users, groups, and that layer, the Flask App Builder does not have that concept baked in of multi-tenancy, so we have to kind of bypass that. So a complex topic that's pretty interesting. There's also multiple ways to implement multi-tenancy. So for people who are interested in this topic, we could probably spin it off and have a conversation maybe on Slack, which brings this idea to it'd be really cool in the community to build kind of these sub communities. So I've been thinking about that in the past too, of like if someone is really interested, say in geospatial, we could have a group of people in the community that say, hey, I'm a Superset a contributor or someone who's interested in Superset, and here's the 3 topics that I'm really interested in. So having this map of who's interested in certain things would really help creating these little sub communities and create more opportunities for collaboration. So maybe an initiative we should start in the future.
Thanks. So there's more questions trickling in, which is really awesome. But there's a couple of things I wanted to get to in the presentation, in the content, because clearly the roadmap doesn't stop at 1.0, and I really want to kind of talk about how to collaborate about the roadmap. So if you guys don't mind, I would like to get to that part and use any remaining time to cover the rest of the questions. So to kind of close it out, in terms of performance, one big item on the roadmap is global async query support. So essentially rebuilding the backend to enable asynchronous data loading for charts and SQL Lab, and this will improve the user experience and make query loading more predictable, especially when there's a lot of charts on a dashboard or when queries are long running. This is sort of an architectural / performance tech dad, if you will. So we kind of talked about 1.0. Hopefully people got at least some idea of what it entails. And again, I encourage people to look at the actual roadmap for details. But where do we go from here? What's beyond 1.0? And I think the quick answer is it's up to all of us, up to the community. It's an open roadmap, and anyone is welcome. Anyone and everyone is welcome to add their feature request to the roadmap. Again, this is a dedicated repo, so there's no harm in putting in ideas at their early stage, and it's not gonna sort of create more noise for the actual product development or the code, shipping code in the main repo. Yeah, so everyone's welcome to post their ideas. And when it comes to what does it take to post an idea, it's really simple. If you have an idea, a feature idea or something that you want to, a specific set of expectations, create an item in the public roadmap, and then community members will work with you to define the project, ask questions, kind of probing questions, ask for clarifications, additional ideas, and that discussion and collaboration can happen in the open. And GitHub's awesome way to kind of capture those conversations and the details of it is available. The power of that is available in the roadmap, and then to make it happen, we need to find a team to work with. We can so certainly there's quite a number of teams in the community, and by having this conversation out there, people can pitch in and say, or step up and say, hey, I can do this, I can do that. So essentially find the ways to make it happen. Whether you need engineers, PMs, designers, these people are all in there in the community, and they will step up. Again, as a reminder, SIP53, there's a link here, and then there's the README, and the actual roadmap is where you would create a card or an issue, and that will put it out in the open for discussion. That's the end of what I've been wanting to cover. It's a lot to cover in the space of an hour. We will make this content available. We're gonna have to find a way to put it out there. But yeah, let's roadmap away into the future. Let's get Superset to its tipping point. More questions?
I typed a bunch of answers, and then there's one I was typing that probably is better to not type and just answer. So the one that's left up is, when will the bug around what I believe as propagate be fixed? I'm looking for the feature in many other BI tools that allow for clicking on any item on a chart and have other charts kind of adapt to it. So this doesn't sound like a bug as much of a feature request around something that we call not propagate, but we call it cross filtering. So it's the ability for a chart to emit a filtering event that other charts in a dashboard can respond to, right? So that means a picture, a bar chart with say countries and in a dashboard, and then you click on a country and it emits a filtering event on that country for the rest of the dashboard. So this has been a highly requested feature, and interestingly, the semantics in Superset to do that exists today. So that means like, filter box is just another chart that's a special type of chart that emits filter, which now we're replacing with the dashboard native component. As part of that work, we reviewed that API of how cross filtering and the pub sub of how charts can emit not only filtering events, but eventually other events in the context of a dashboard, right? It might be like, hey, I want other charts to group by a specific field now. So we reviewed a lot of this, and I think that it's going to follow naturally Now what we need to do is like looking at the different plugins or the different native charts that we have and see in what capacity are we going to enable them to emit events. And it's fairly subtle, but certainly like a really interesting topic. One more thing I might want to mention is like cross filtering sometimes is done on the client side, meaning like as you emit filtering event, these events happen kind of more in real time on the front end without having to do round trips to the back end. In Superset, I would say it's kind of baked in the product pretty deep that we're going to do like round trips to emit cross filtering events. So that will probably stay that way for the time being. Look like Evan went off video, or you open your video. I don't know if you had other comments on this.
Not particularly, just that we're kind of starting with the architecture of this, kind of figuring out what types of events can be emitted and received, and kind of working up the schemas. And from there, we'll have to layer on chart support. But I'm actually pretty excited about this feature.
Me too. It's been kind of overdue in some ways. Just to explain like some of the complexity behind it. So if I was talking about a bar chart emitting events, right? So what happens with the bar chart in Superset is you might have a dimension for different bars, right? Showing the country, but you might also have metric 1 and metric 2. So if you click on metric 2, you're not really clicking on a dimension member. So what should happen then, how to do that well, where it's not confusing users too. And I think sometimes you want to emit events, but sometimes you don't. So we need to let dashboard creators kind of define that. And we need to make it clear too that there's a call to action, or there's like interactive components, and highlight that clearly on the dashboard. So it's, from a design perspective, it's pretty heavy. And from a technical perspective, it's also fairly complex.
Yeah.
So.
And it might not just be filters. It might be things like highlighting too. So say you mouse over something, it might light up a related object on another chart. There's a lot of possibilities.
But yeah, definitely like a phase 2, phase 3. As I see more questions coming in.
Is it correct to expect Superset 1.0 to drop in either December or January? Yes. The short answer is yes. The long answer is a lot of things are in flight. And so the exact timing is, I think within a matter of a few weeks, we're going to have a more precise timeline. But generally, the goal is to have it as an RC in December or January, again, depending on how things play out around the end of the year.
Yeah, we want it to be like a super hardened release too. So the real question, so we know that it's very likely that the RC will drop in December, but like the hardening is unclear how long that's going to take. I think we should make a really, really solid release, right? That is bug free and very usable, and even like the cosmetic tweaks, making sure that everything kind of looks good and aligned, you know. And we've had a lot of these like CSS tweaks and bugs too, and I think 1.0 should look super slick and just work very, very well. So if it takes longer to harden the release, we'll take the time to do that, and we'll keep community focus on just making a really solid release for 1.0.
But overall, I would say the bulk of the work is either underway or coming near completion. So we have we're on track to be done with the body of 1.0 in December, and then how we exactly, as Max said, how we harden it or how we ship it is going to come from that. But yeah, if it should, I would be very disappointed if it didn't ship like early January.
Yeah, and I think like, you know, call to action too, we can ask for help on hardening. Like we'll need an army of people kind of reporting issues and bugs and helping tweak. So if you want to get involved, now is a better time than ever to get involved, whether from a issue reporting standpoint or fixing bugs, fixing issues, and working with us at Hardening 1.0.
Okay, Srini, maybe last call for questions.
Yeah, so Saul had one. Yeah, so I had one question. The cross filtering feature, the Max, I think he meant cross filtering. He had, this is a follow up to his earlier question about when we thought we would see that in Superset.
I call it cross filtering, not crust, but CORSS, as in like a cross. But yeah, cross filtering. Unclear. It's possible to do it today, right? So I think like plugins can emit filtering events, so it won't be like a zero. It's not a Boolean like whether we have it or we don't. It's probably going to show as bar charts first, right? Like clicking on a bar emits some filtering event. But it's really unclear. It's not on the roadmap as far as I can tell. I don't know when we tackle that, but we will. I think we'll get to that for sure.
Let's put it on the roadmap and talk about when we can make it happen. All right, Srini, I guess back to you.
Yeah, awesome. It looks like we're pretty much at the end of the hour. So if there are any follow-up questions, please ask them in our Slack community. We will send out a recording for folks that were not here for the full session. But yeah, thanks everyone for attending. I hope this was useful. And enjoy Veterans Day if you're in the US. Otherwise, enjoy your Wednesday.
Thanks, everyone. See you around in the community.